And we've also got Lloyd from, well, he doesn't say exactly where he's from, but he's familiar with Japanese currency, so I'm assuming that he has personal experience, but he's an American speaking person, so he was listening to our program. Remember, we were talking about Riho and how much money she said she earned from AEW for wrestling like 12 matches. It worked out to like 30-something thousand a match for a year or whatever the
it was in the range of $400,000, I believe.
But the Japanese press reported that she was making 60 million yen. And we were talking about what is the exchange rate, or I don't know what the technical terms are, but someone, Lloyd, who is more well-versed in this than we are, says there is no difference in unit like American dollars and cents, or more concretely, think of 1 yen as the equivalent of 1 cent, or 1 cent rather. In the current currency exchange, 1 cent can give you 1 yen, or 1.56 yen. So it's about a penny, right? So 60 million yen is indeed $383,669 or whatever the fuck. In Japan, the average salary for a new I assume university, grad is about 3 to 3.5 million yen. $22,000 is the average salary in Japan for a new graduate of university. However, minimal inflation has happened in Japan since the bubble burst in the early 90s, so wages and prices are minimally higher than what they were back then. But 60 million is a fuck ton of money for anyone working in Japan, is what Lloyd says. So how about them apples? If you figured out, even us over here with our just, simple small town bird law currency, if you reported how many pennies you got paid, how many cents you got paid, it would sound a lot bigger, wouldn't it?
The other interesting thing I hadn't thought about until you just said this is taxes. If she made 400,000 or claims she made around 400,000, is that after taxes? And if she's working in the States, but still living in Japan, she's not a United States citizen that I'm aware of. How does that work? I don't know anything about how that works if you're a Japanese citizen making hundreds of thousands of dollars in America.
Well, but hold on, Cowboy, because it would be her gross, because she's an independent contractor, because that's what we haven't heard they gave her an office job yet, right? So she wouldn't be an employee. So that would be probably her guarantee or her minimum or however, but it would be her income from AEW, and then she would be paying taxes on that, just to quote a number like that in the wrestling business from my extensive experience. So, but it's $400,000.
Hey, you know what? She's worth it. Because this division sucks so bad, whenever she reappears like a couple times a year, I now get happy. Like, oh, this is going to be fucking hysterical for the next 2 weeks. And then she's gone again. So I'm okay with it.
I need to figure out, we might need to get Jay Sharknado to help us. I want to start telling people how much money that I make every year in cents. Like I might make 60 million cents. I make more than 60 million cents if that's 400 grand. Well, goddamn, how many? Boy, I could tell people I make like fucking 180 million fucking cents a year. That's fuck you. I quit. I'm retiring. I'm done. Close it up, Brian. I don't need to work anymore. I made 180 million cents last year.
If I ran for prime minister, I would say, and next year I will introduce the quarter. Change society altogether.
All righty. Well, speaking of changing societies,
before you move on with the topic of Riho's salary, and we don't know exactly what it is, and this is what she said to the Japanese press, and Who knows what it really is?
Well, and to be honest, with what we know, he was paying a number of other people 5 years ago, and with her having friends in the industry, it may not be ridiculous. But go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, with Tony Khan stating that he is willing to spend whatever it takes to be competitive on the free agent market, which unfortunately is a necessity right now. I don't know who the options are, but if someone comes up, he kind of has to dive in because he needs some freshness somehow. And with the idea that Arn Anderson, Mark Henry, Jake Hager, because we just talked about them, we figured that's at least $1 million right there. A lot of the smaller wrestlers we heard were cut a few months ago, but that wasn't really much money, we didn't think. I mean, they were complaining about not being able to afford food for their families, so I don't think that was too much. But
hell, Jerry, the way you're paying us, we ain't even on food.
But there are people saying that Tony is clearly trying to cut the budget, but at the same time, obviously, Mercedes Moné, you hear two things from people inside. You hear she's not making as much as everyone says, and then you also hear she's making a fucking ton of money. So that's a lot of money. Other free agents he's going to bring in, you got to figure they're making a lot of money. Like, none of these guys like Edge or anyone are signing with AEW to make less than what they were making. So it's not like he is going to cut budget and cut what he's going to have to pay people. There's no real question here. I guess just an overall conversation about the AEW budget and how they're going to function.
Well, but since you ain't going to go here, I'll go here with the budget, because we talk about talent all the time, but that's not the only way that he spends money. And besides that, let's throw in the fact that he will continue to pay everybody that's injured on his roster the money they're contractually obligated to make. And that's what, did they figure 15% of the roster is out either injured or Tony's telling them they're hurt. It comes as news to them, but in that category somehow.
It's funny the way you put it. Or Tony tells them they're hurt.
I was going to...
What's up, Ricky Starks?
Hey, Ricky Stark, man. I was going to just dismiss this as the ravings of a fucking cosplaying child when Matt of the Buckaroos said that, remember on the pay-per-view, he said, cut the music at the final countdown. It's to $200,000. We're over budget already. But now then, riddle me this, Batman. Where's the mark between these two that I'm about to mention? Because that sounds like what a goofy goof would say. Like, it's cost us $200,000. You know, it's like Vern Gagne's $100,000 battle royal. Uncle Dave apparently just wrote in his weekly missive, his manifesto, I believe that is a real number. Now, is he just believing what they tell him now to a preposterous degree? Or did Tony, there is no they, did Tony really spend $200,000 to play the final countdown on pay-per-view, which is very important? You, as a former music industry insider, I didn't think about it at the time, but is that outrageous? Because it was, even though it's been so long ago, that song is not in huge demand, I wouldn't think, these days. Which of these preposterous things could possibly be true, and which one is the mark? Tony for paying it or Dave for believing it?
I don't know if this is something you should point your finger at Dave right off the bat. Now, there's no uniform fee. Every band, every rights holder would set their own fee. You could probably go license a song from some band no one's ever heard of, relatively cheap, maybe even get all the rights to it in the publishing. But when it's an established song, which I'm going to guess they possibly still make 7 figures a year just on royalties.
Oh, Jesus.
Of this one, it was Europe's biggest song. It sold well in America. It sold well all around the world. They probably still make a lot of money off it. I don't think it's outrageous that would be the amount, because notoriously, they didn't want to license it, or they didn't want to license it cheaply. I have a tweet here from June 26, 2023, so a year ago, Brandon Thurston tweeted out, Tony Khan says the Final Countdown song license cost, quote, as much as a wrestler's contract.
Oh!
Rights are in perpetuity, so it will be usable in video library. Now again, it's important to note, Jefferson Starship, Jane, is obviously a song where they have an agreement where they could use it every single week. This may be a song where each usage is a single, that's a separate deal. So whatever as much as a wrestler's contract was in 2023, we don't know if that's the same one for using it a year later on this pay-per-view. It's also important to note, not the only song licensed on this pay-per-view. Orange Cassidy had 2 theme songs. Jefferson Starship Jane and the Pixies, Where Is My Mind? They brought back.
Well, you know what? I skipped that, so I didn't realize that they played 2 of them, but Where Is My Mind maybe they mean they just buy that motherfucker and use it as their opening theme.
So I'm not going to say Dave is saying something outrageous. Now, I'm sure that may be the word going around in the company, and I'm also sure it could possibly be true. You know, licensing a song by, the Box Tops is probably a lot easier than licensing a song by the Beatles. And the Beatles would be able to set their costs. I mean,
or refuse entirely in some cases. Some artists will not allow their music to be used in this frivolous a manner.
And again, I say the Beatles, but it all depends on who owns the rights. Who owns the rights to the recording? Who owns the publishing? Everything has to come together to make these deals happen. And if they get $200,000 per usage, that's extraordinary.
Not only extraordinary, but even for it at all, if they paid $200,000 for it last year and they've only used it, then right? And now they use it a year later.
But again, too, it's about the rights. They're not just asking for the rights to use it at a live event. They're asking for the rights to have it in the catalog going forward. So whenever they replay this match on a streaming service or wherever it may be, it's not like a WWE situation where they have to edit out the music.
Well, exactly. And it's on pay-per-view to begin with, and then it will be sold in some manner, whether it's streaming or in the old days of 2 or 3 years ago, DVDs or whatever. So I knew it had to be, but just the idea that what the fuck? No, Brian, get a new fucking song. We still haven't made a goddamn, we've lost tens of millions, 100 million, however many millions of dollars. Get a fucking, we'll when we turn $1 in profit on this fucking venture, we'll pay $200,000 for your fucking song. It's what, I know, well, hold on. Some people are going to, well, that's what he's identified with. That's what he used in Ring of Honor. That's what he used in Indy. Yes. And nobody paid for it then. Because it was under the radar, just you fucking subgenre of individuals. And if anybody had tried to stooge them off, they probably would have sued or whatever the fuck, and they certainly wouldn't have been able to afford $200,000.
Now, for all the complaints about Mark booking from Tony Khan, this is a Mark kind of move. It wasn't even really needed here. And if it costs $200,000, again, at the same time where you would think they're in a position to cut salaries, or maybe not even cut salaries, but cut the amount of people they're paying and not hire lower end people for as much money as you've been paying lower end people. But when you're dealing with the son of a billion, I said this, you can go back before AEW was really announced. And then, of course, after it was announced before Dynamite, I was saying all these things. My concerns, it was less about Tony individually and more about my experience dealing with the sons of millionaires and billionaires. You're not dealing with people in reality. You're dealing with people who could spend money frivolously and not give a shit. $200,000 is a drop in the bucket.
The only boy who could ever book it was the son of a billionaire. The only boy who could ever cook it was the son of a billionaire. Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
You see, you should have done, was the son of a bumper man. I mean, that would have worked.
Okay, anybody out there, Rocky Ramone on down in the cult of Cornette, Uh, get to work on that. I've given you inspiration.